The space station Orion Drift floated quietly near the edge of the galaxy. It was old, rusty in places, and forgotten by most. Only a small crew of humans stayed there, scientists, engineers, and guards. Life was slow. Nothing exciting ever. Happened until people started dying. It began with a guard named Ray. One morning, he didn't show up for duty. His room was locked from the inside. When they opened it, he was sitting on his bed dead. No signs of struggle. No wounds. No sound was heard. It was like he had just stopped living. The next week, a scientist named Mira vanished. Her research notes were scattered across the floor. Her tea was still warm, but she was gone, no trace. No broken doors. No alarms by the third death. The crew started whispering. "It's like something is here," one engineer said, eyes wide. "Something we can't see." But the security cameras saw nothing. The scanners picked up nothing. The official report called it accidental failure and told the crew to stay calm. But Ethan knew better. Ethan was a simple maintenance worker. He checked the pipes, cleaned the filters, and repaired broken vents. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a scientist. But he noticed things others didn't. The air sometimes felt wrong. It was too still, too cold, even when the system showed normal temperatures. The lights flickered when he walked alone down hallway C, and he swore he once saw a shadow move behind him. When there was no one there, he told his supervisor. She laughed. "You're working too much, Ethan. Get some rest." So he kept quiet. But one night, while repairing a broken panel near the hydro bay, Ethan heard something. A soft sound like breathing. But it wasn't human. It was slower, deeper, rhythmic. He turned. No one. Still, the breathing continued. And then it stopped. Ethan held his breath. The silence after was even worse. It was heavy, like something was waiting. He reached into his tool belt and pulled out a small sound recorder. He turned it on and whispered, "I know you're there." Nothing happened. For a full minute, it was quiet. Then, the light above him blinked twice, and the breathing returned closer. Ethan didn't run. He stayed still. Slowly, he spoke again. "I'm not afraid." The breathing stopped. A whisper replied, so soft he almost missed it. "You should be." Ethan froze. The voice wasn't human. It had no accent, no breath behind it. Just presence. But when he turned around, there was nothing. He reported it again. No one believed him. They said the stress was getting to him, but Ethan wasn't imagining it. He began staying up late, checking vents and corners, walking slowly through the quiet halls, whispering into the dark. "Are you watching me? Can you understand me? Why are you here?" And sometimes the lights flickered in answer. Sometimes the air grew colder. Sometimes he heard whispers that didn't belong to anyone. He started calling them the Silent Ones. One night, he saw something more. A flash. Just for a second. Not a shadow, but a figure. Tall, thin, covered in a shimmer, like glass bending. Light. It moved across the hallway like a ghost, but Ethan saw it clearly. He smiled, just a little. "You're not invisible to me," he whispered. The shimmer stopped, then vanished. From that moment on, things changed. Wherever Ethan went, the air felt thicker. The lights dimmed as he passed, and every time he whispered, he felt watched. Not in fear, not in danger, just observed. The Silent Ones were real, and somehow they were interested in him. Other crew members still denied it. Some even left the station early, scared by the strange deaths. But Ethan stayed. He knew something big was coming, and he wasn't afraid, because he could hear the whispering. Now every night before sleep, soft voices in the vents, watching, waiting, and Ethan whispered back. Asterisk, the station was empty. Too empty. As Ethan walked into the central lab, every screen blinked once, then all turned black. A single word appeared on the wall, glowing in soft blue light. Why? It was 2:13 station time. Ethan moved slowly through the lab corridor, flashlight in hand. The power had gone out just 10 minutes ago. No warning, no storm, no technical issue, just darkness. Backup lights were working, but flickering. Everything felt off. He had seen the word glowing on the lab wall. Why? No one else saw it. When he brought the captain to check, it was gone. Ethan, she said, I need you to stop playing these games. He wanted to yell, but he didn't. He just nodded and returned to his corner of the station. Alone again, but he wasn't really alone. He could feel it. In the vents, in the lights, in the vibrations of the walls. They were there. He entered the empty lounge and sat by the observation window. Outside, the stars were quiet, but his reflection didn't move with him. He froze. In the glass, his body was still, but behind him a second shape, tall, transparent, bending light like water. He didn't turn around. He simply whispered, You've been watching me, haven't you? Nothing. Then he blinked, and the reflection was gone. Ethan began experimenting. He whispered words aloud in the dead zones at the station. I see you. Can you understand me? Are you afraid of me? Sometimes a door would open by itself. Sometimes a tool would be moved. And sometimes he heard a breath beside his ear. The silent ones had been here long before the humans arrived. He now understood that. They didn't live in the same spectrum. They moved in folds of space humans didn't even know how to measure. But Ethan somehow could sense them. He wasn't psychic. He wasn't gifted. But his mind worked differently. He heard frequencies others couldn't hear. Like a sixth sense tuned into whispers no one else could catch. And the silent ones were beginning to realize it. One night, in the waste control room, Ethan left a message scratched into the metal wall. I don't want to hurt you, but I will not be silent either. He returned the next day. Below his writing, 4 simple lines had appeared, thin, glowing etchings carved without any tool. Then speak. We listen. You're the first. Why now? He stared at the glowing lines, heart pounding. They understood him, and they were curious. Back in his quarters, Ethan sat still for a long time. He remembered something his grandmother once told him as a child. The universe is full of ears, but few mouths worth hearing. Maybe the silent ones had waited for someone like him, not because he was powerful, but because he listened differently. He didn't shout. He whispered. And they whispered back. From that day on, Ethan became the bridge. No longer feared the flickering lights or the sudden silence. He spoke to the empty rooms. And answers came not in words, but in shifts of gravity, in moving tools, in humming sounds under the walls. The others on the station started to notice strange changes too. Broken systems began fixing themselves. Air filters cleaned faster than ever before, and a strange warmth returned to the ship's coldest halls. They thought Ethan was doing it, but Ethan knew better. They were helping now. They were watching him and learning. But deep within the darkest level of the station, in a locked and unused maintenance crawl space, something else stirred. An elder among the silent ones had seen enough. And it whispered to the others, he's dangerous. Too aware. End it before others awaken. Asterisk. The walls were whispering, not just to Ethan, but about him. He touched one metal panel, and a soft voice echoed behind it. He sees. He speaks. End him. The station was quiet, but not empty. Ethan stood in the main corridor, staring at a place where no one else ever stopped. It was just a smooth wall panel, plain and gray. But tonight it pulsed. Dim light pushed through the edges. Like breath caught inside metal dot, he pressed his hand to the panel, and it spoke, not in words, but in thought, not in sound, but in pressure. You shouldn't exist. The voice didn't scare Ethan. He whispered back, I didn't ask to exist, but I do. The pulse faded, and the corridor fell silent again. But Ethan knew it wasn't over. That night, he dreamed Dot in his dream. He stood inside the station. But everything was wrong. The lights were upside down. The doors opened into darkness. And on the ceiling, dozens of glowing blue eyes watched him. He heard whispers all around him, but one stood out. Speak the old word, if you dare. He awoke, heart-pounding Dot. There was something in his dream, something the Silent Ones wanted him to find, something hidden, something old. For days, Ethan stayed in his room, studying every scrap of old language, ancient scripts from Earth's forgotten past, alien runes copied from damaged data cores. Then, he found it, a single symbol. It didn't belong to any human record. But something in his gut told him this was it. Dot. It looked like a circle with 3 breaks, like an open mouth whispering. He didn't know how to pronounce it, but when he drew it on the floor, the station shook. Dot lights dimmed. Dot systems froze. Every corridor grew cold. Dot, and in the deepest part of the ship, the Silent Ones stirred from their hiding. Ethan stood in the central hub, alone. He leaned close to the console, placed his mouth near the comms mic, and whispered the symbol's meaning the best he could. Inertia. A wave pulsed through. The station. Not sound, not heat. Something deeper. A door opened behind him, one that didn't exist before. A dark hallway waited inside. He entered without fear. The hallway was narrow and alive, pulsing slightly like a throat. Whispers bounced off the walls, not hostile, not kind, just curious. Dot, that he reached the end. Dot. It was a room filled with lights floating in midair, each one flickering like a candle. Dot, and in the middle, an alien figure stood, not invisible, not shimmering. Dot visible, real tall, eyes deep blue, skin like glass. The alien stepped forward and tilted its head. You are the first to hear us fully, it said, voice like music underwater. Why you? Ethan didn't know Dot, so he whispered, maybe because I listened. The alien blinked slowly. We speak through fear, through silence, through shadow, but never like this. Ethan stepped forward. Maybe it's time for something new. A long pause. Then the alien placed one hand on Ethan's chest. Instantly, Ethan saw visions worlds. Collapsing, stars falling, species silenced by fear of what they didn't understand. The Silent Ones weren't just watchers. They were judges. Observers. DECIDERS. And Ethan had just changed everything. Back in the main station, alarms blared. The captain shouted over the comms. All crew code red. Something's moving through the station. Non-human life detected. But Ethan didn't move. He walked calmly out of the dark hallway, his eyes glowing faintly now. The whispers followed him, and for the first time in centuries, the Silent Ones followed a human. Asterisk in a hidden chamber light years away, 11 Varelli elders gathered around a floating screen. It showed Ethan walking through Orion Drift. One elder whispered coldly, a human just entered the quiet path. That should be impossible. They watched him. From far beyond the edges of the known galaxy. The Varelli Council observed Ethan in silence. The chamber they sat in was carved from living crystal, buried deep in an asteroid, cloaked from all sensors. For thousands of years, they had remained hidden, untouchable, invisible, perfect. But now one human, just one, had whispered their forgotten word, and walked where only the Varelli were allowed. He must be destroyed, said the oldest elder, eyes glowing like ice. No, said another. "He must be understood first. This has never happened." "But what if he's the key?" a third voice asked. "The key to what we've feared most?" The room fell. Silent. They didn't fear Ethan. They feared what he might awaken Dot back on Orion Drift. Ethan returned to the main deck. His eyes no longer looked quite human. They shimmered with faint rings of light blue and silver, constantly shifting. The captain noticed. "Ethan, what's wrong with your eyes?" He smiled softly. "I'm just seeing more now." When she reached for her weapon, every light in the room went out. Whispers filled the air. Dot machines stopped moving, and the gravity shifted. Then, just as fast, everything returned to normal. The captain lowered her hand, suddenly shaking. "You did that?" she asked. "No," Ethan said. "They did." The Vorelli Council sent a message no human could receive, but Ethan heard it in his dreams. "You are crossing limits. Turn back." He whispered in his sleep. "I was never trying to cross them. You opened the door first." When he awoke, the mirror in his room had cracked. Dot, and on the wall beside it, 3 symbols had appeared burned in without fire. They meant final warning. But Ethan didn't stop. He returned to the whisper chamber, the hidden hallway he had unlocked earlier. This time, it was waiting for him. The alien from before stood still, silent, but now it bowed its head. "You have passed the trial," it said. "Now comes the price." "What price?" Ethan asked. The alien turned slowly. "You are no longer unknown to us, and that means you are not safe." Behind Ethan, the walls began to shift, forming a symbol only the Vorelli elders used when declaring someone a galactic danger. Ethan had just been marked. Suddenly, hundreds of other Vorelli, once unseen, appeared inside the whisper chamber, all staring at him. "You should be erased," said one. "Yet we hesitate," said another. "Why?" asked Ethan. "Because you're curious?" "No," said the first, "because your voice reached us." Ethan stood tall. "Then maybe it's time you listened more." Back on Earth, strange signals were being picked up from deep space. Unreadable codes, sudden blackouts in satellites, and one message repeating, again and again, on a secret frequency only one AI system could process. "One of yours has crossed the veil. Prepare for contact." The Vorelli Council argued for hours. Erase the human. Study him. Fear him. Join him. But one thing was clear. Ethan was no longer just a man. He was a mirror. And in him, the Silent One saw both hope and horror. He could lead to peace, or awaken something worse than war. As he stepped out of the chamber, Ethan whispered to the air, "Come with me." And for the first time in history, one of the Silent Ones followed a human by choice. Asterisk. But now she sat inside a glowing containment ring, breathing slowly, her glassy skin flickering like broken stars. And when Ethan stepped into the room, the Silent One spoke. "I did not come to be caught. I came to speak to you." The crew didn't know what they were looking at. They had no files, no records, no name. But this being tall, graceful, shimmering with silver light sat quietly inside the reinforced energy field in the ship's deep isolation chamber. She wasn't struggling. She wasn't afraid. She was waiting. When the team tried to scan her, the systems failed. Every reading returned blank. The captain said, "That thing isn't supposed to exist." Ethan just whispered, "She does, and she understands us." No one believed him. Until she spoke. "I was not taken," she said calmly. "I chose to remain." Her voice didn't come from her mouth. It vibrated inside the walls, inside there. Bones. The scientists froze. The guards stepped back, and Ethan stepped forward. "You're the one who followed me," he said. She nodded. "You whispered. I listened." Her name couldn't be translated. So Ethan called her Vera, which meant truth in an old Earth language. She allowed it, but she would only speak to Ethan Dot every day. They sat across from each other, just him and the being no one could understand. The others grew frustrated, even angry. "She's playing with you," one officer warned. "She could destroy us at any second." Ethan didn't answer, because he already knew something no one else did. Vera was scared. She confessed it on. "The fifth night, I came to speak," she said. "But others will come to silence." Ethan asked softly, "Why me?" She looked at him with glowing eyes. "Because your voice reaches where even ours cannot." He didn't understand it fully, but he felt the truth behind her words. "You've changed us," she continued. "You made the council uncertain, and that makes you dangerous." "To who?" Ethan asked. She replied, "To everything that fears change." That night, alarms blared across the station. A foreign signal hit the defense grid sharp, fast, coded in a language Earth had never seen. The captain screamed over comms. "Unknown ship just dropped out of fold space. It's not showing up on sensors, but it's here." Only Ethan knew what it was. "The Vorelli," he whispered, and Vera nodded from inside her cell. "They've come for me and for you." The ship shuddered, not from weapons, from pressure-like space itself was. Folding inward, Ethan turned to Vera. "Can you stop them?" She closed her eyes. "No, but I can stand between you and them." "Why would you do that?" "Because you listened." Suddenly, the lights dimmed. Every screen went dark, and a voice echoed through every speaker, deep and final. "Surrender the speaker, or be silenced." The crew panicked. Weapons were armed. Escape pods activated, but Ethan stayed still. Vera, still behind the containment ring, stood up for the first time. Her body glowed brighter than ever. Her voice cut through the air like lightning. "You called him a threat, but he is our mirror, and if you erase him, you erase us all." Ethan stepped forward. "I'll go," he said. "I'll speak for myself." The captain grabbed his arm. "Don't be stupid. You don't even know what they are." He looked her in the eyes and said, "They don't either. That's why they're scared." Then he whispered one final word toward the air. "Inertia." And the station stopped shaking. In the silence that followed, Vera looked at him softly. "You are not what we expected, human." Ethan smiled faintly. "Neither are you." In the deepest archive of the Vorelli memory core, an old vision replayed, forgotten for ages. A single figure stood under a dying star, whispering to it. And that figure was human. The council was in disarray. Across distant space, Vorelli voices clashed across frequencies no human could hear. They had reviewed Ethan's actions, his whispers, and the strange signals coming from Earth. Then they found something buried deep in their ancient data cores. A record. Old. Corrupted. But clear enough to terrify them. It showed a being that looked human millennia ago, standing on the surface of a collapsing planet, surrounded by Vorelli. He was calm, silent, whispering to the star as it died. Then the Vorelli fled, and the star stabilized. Even now, the record made no sense. "We erased that history," said one elder. And yet, another replied, "He stands among us again." On Orion Drift, Ethan stared into Vera's glowing eyes. She sat across from him in the command lounge, no longer in the containment cell. The crew didn't resist her anymore. Not after what she did shielding the station from her own kinds. Arrival. Ethan's hands shook slightly. "I had a dream," he said, "but it didn't feel like mine. I was on a world made of crystal. There was a ring of Vorelli, and I was speaking to something in the sky." Vera nodded. "Not a dream, a memory. Yours and not yours." He frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," she whispered, "that your species was never as young as the galaxy believed." The Vorelli thought humans were new primitive, blowed, blind, but that was only because Earth had been sealed long ago. The Vorelli themselves helped block humanity from reaching the stars. Not out of hatred, but fear. Humanity had something in its blood. A sound, a signal, a whisper that even the silent ones could hear and couldn't understand. They erased all records, destroyed all traces, but something slipped through. Ethan was proof. "You are an echo," Vera said softly, "of something old, something we once tried to forget." Ethan stood slowly. "Why would you forget it?" "Because it made us feel small." Outside the station, the Vorelli fleet hovered silently in dark space. They hadn't attacked. Not yet. They were watching, waiting. The council didn't know what to do. If they struck Ethan, would it erase the threat or awaken it? If they let him go, would he spread the whisper? Inside the station, Ethan walked alone through the long corridor that curved around the outer hall. The stars were visible through the glass. And suddenly, he remembered. He remembered a time when he wasn't just a man, but part of something greater. A voice from another life echoed inside him. "Speak gently, and the stars will bow." He reached the farthest end of the station and stood by the emergency comms beacon. Without touching a button, he whispered, "We were never gone, just quiet." The beacon lit up on its own. It sent out a signal. And far away, beyond the Vorelli fleet, something ancient heard it. Something that made even the silent ones shiver. Back on Earth, deep in a forgotten bunker, a long-dead AI system flickered. Back to life. A voice crackled through. "Human signal detected. Archive number 7. Keyword, Whisperborn." Vera stood before Ethan, her voice soft but urgent. "They know now. The council. They know you're not just an accident." He met her eyes. "So what am I?" Her answer was quiet. "Proof. Asterisk, the Vorelli fleet didn't move. They just hovered, dark giants in space, silent, watching." And then came a voice from far beyond them. Old, human. And it whispered, "We hear you, Ethan. We remember." The stars outside Orion Drift had changed. One by one, they blinked, not out, but brighter, as if someone was lighting beacons across space. Signals, hidden for ages, were waking up. And the Vorelli knew what it meant. Humanity was remembering itself. Ethan stood at the edge of the command platform, watching the long, shadowy ships outside the glass. He should have felt fear. But instead, he felt seeing. Vera stood beside him. "They're afraid," she said. He nodded. "They should be. But not of war, not of truth, not of change." Across the galaxy, whispers began to spread, not just among the Vorelli, but in other hidden corners of space. Old species, long silent, started to stir. Ancient records began blinking again. And in those records, the same symbol kept appearing, a circle, open at 3 points. The mark of the Whisperborn, the forgotten name of early humans. The Vorelli Council met one last time. "What do we do now?" One asked. The oldest among them, the one who first called for Ethan's death, spoke softly. "We listen." Back on the station, Ethan was preparing to leave. Not because he was running, but because the signal he had sent got a reply. From deep space, a new ship approached. Not VOR Eli, not Earth-built, something else. Something lost. A vessel made of crystal and metal, humming with old power. And on its hull, glowing in ancient light, was a single word: "Welcome." As the ship docked, the crew of Orion Drift stared in silence, and Ethan turned to Vera. "Will you come with me?" She tilted her head. "You would walk into the unknown with me?" "I already did," he smiled. "And I never walked alone." He stepped onto the ship. It felt familiar, like walking into a childhood memory you never lived. The lights didn't blind him. The air felt like home, and in the center of the chamber, a voice greeted him. Not through speakers, not through air, but through the stars. Welcome back, speaker. The silence is over. Back on Earth, everything changed. The message Ethan sent, the whisper, had awakened more than just history. It had awakened memory. Children began drawing strange symbols in their sleep. Engineers heard old voices in deep space code. And the stars no longer felt quiet. The Varelli didn't vanish. They didn't attack. Instead, they began sending emissaries, not in ships, but in thought, to learn, to listen, to remember. As for Ethan, some say he traveled beyond the edge of the known galaxy. Some say he now walks among the whisper-born ships that move between dimensions. Others believe he became something more, not a god, not a warrior, just a human who listened when no one else would. But in every world touched by his voice, the message remained the same. You are not unseen. You are not forgotten. The silence has ended. We hear you now. And so a whisper became a wave, and that wave became a voice, and that voice changed the stars forever. *The end.